Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session of the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS, where we take up the important articles from the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the examination point of view. I'm so sorry, my voice is off today because of the sore throat. So let's start today's discussion by taking up the important articles from the newspaper. Now the articles which are appearing in the newspaper are on our screens, and let's take up the first article of the day. The first article which appears in the newspaper reads, "The conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh region." Now, this is an important article from the point of view of international relations, which features in GS2 and in prelims, where we study those events, current events of national and international importance. So we see a lot of questions pertaining to the international importance featuring in the prelims examination. So with that respect as well, this article becomes important. So let's try to understand what exactly is this conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh region. So first let's look at what exactly is this region. So Nagorno-Karabakh region is a region in the country of Azerbaijan, and the conflict is between two countries, that of Azerbaijan and Armenia. These are two countries which are situated between the Caspian Sea, and which sea is there on this side? The Black Sea. So the countries or the region between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea is known as the Caucasian region. That is why these countries are known as Caucasian countries. So what is this conflict all about? So just like the Kashmir conflict exists between the two countries of India and Pakistan, similarly the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict exists between the two countries of Azerbaijan and Armenia, in which, in a very simple terms, both countries are fighting over a piece of territory. And which is this piece of territory? This is the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Now this territory is situated in the country of Azerbaijan, but the people who are residing in this region are belonging to Armenian ethnicity. So as we can see, the region is situated in one country and it has population of its majority ethnicity of the other country. So this has become the point of clash between these two countries, wherein Armenia wants this region incorporated in its own territories, and Azerbaijan obviously is disagreeing with this. Now how did this conflict start, if we ask this? So back in the 1990s, when USA was not there and there was a total a consolidation of states known as the USSR, and USSR started to decline in the year 1990s, and Azerbaijan was then a part of the USSR. But when the USSR started to disintegrate, the whole territory went into a situation of flux, and Azerbaijan was formed. And this, while the Azerbaijan was forming, this territory, which already had population other than the ethnicity of the major Azerbaijanis people, it had more from the ethnicity of Armenian people. So they occupied this territory and declared that territory independent of Azerbaijan, and since then this territory became a flashpoint, and Azerbaijan wanted to acquire this territory. And after the pandemic, 2 years before, this conflict this region came into conflict once again in the flashpoint, and we can say military struggle or skirmishes between the militaries of both countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan, started to happen. And to stop this, Russia had to come in the middle. Why did Russia have to come into the middle? Because Russia is the country which has stakes in both the countries. Since Azerbaijan itself had come out of USSR, it had links with Russia, and it has also links with Armenia, where it has signed the agreement, or both of them are party to an organization known as CSTO, or the Collective Security Treaty Organization. This is an organization which both Armenia and Russia are part of, wherein Russia promises Armenia that if any military attack will take place on its country, Russia will come to its help. So situation became that Armenia and Azerbaijan, both the countries Russia was supposed to help. So Russia brokered a tripartite peace deal between them on the date of November 10th, 2020. This new peace deal was signed, and which was known as a 9-point agreement, which means that this agreement will have 9 points of settlements. So it was signed by the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. This agreement imposed an immediate ceasefire on whatever skirmishes were going on, a timeline for withdrawal of the Azerbaijan's occupied regions, and the introduction of Russian peacekeepers and the need for new transport corridors. So this was the peace deal that was signed by the three parties, that is Russia, Armenia and Azerbaijan. So it was agreed. What were the 9 points of this agreement? The major points were that both sides will now maintain positions in the areas that they currently hold, which will mean a significant gain for Azerbaijan, as it has reclaimed over 15 to 20% of its lost territory during the recent conflict. So as it happens every time whenever a peace deal is signed, it affects one party more and the other party feels negatively affected. That is where it came that Azerbaijan came to benefit from this deal more and not Armenia. That is why in today's time Armenia is not ready to accept this deal. As we see, Armenian people are against the deal and have protested, while Azerbaijan is pleased with the deal and considered of historic importance. The other thing which it said that all military operations are suspended and Russian peacekeepers will be deployed for a period of 5 years along the line of contact in the Nagorno-Karabakh and along the Lachin corridor, which links the Karabakh capital Stepanakert to Armenia. So it was said that certain peaceful corridors will be built between these regions. But all of these points that were agreed in the 9-point agreement, Armenia disagreed to it, and that is why in today's time Armenia is still indulged in violating the ceasefire that was agreed in this 9-point agreement between the three countries. So as we have understood this issue as to what exactly is the problem, it is basically an issue over a geographical territory. So from the UPSC point of view, what becomes important for us is the name of these locations as to where exactly is the Nagorno-Karabakh region found. So it's in Azerbaijan. Then the capitals of both cities. So Yerevan is the capital of Armenia and Baku is the capital of Azerbaijan. So these are the important pointers with respect to the prelims examination that can be useful for us. So with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, Fundamental Duties Key to Social Transformation. Now on the occasion of 15th August, that is Independence Day, the Chief Justice of India N.V. Ramanna gave a speech and highlighted the importance of fundamental duties. Now the discussion on fundamental duties has been quite there and quite in the debate, has been quite seen in the in debate, and that is why it becomes important for us to analyze this issue and to know it from the UPSC exams perspective. So it becomes important for us from the point of view of GS2, where we study the important aspects of polity. So let's quickly look at the important aspects related to fundamental duties. Now when we talk about fundamental duties, what exactly are fundamental duties? We know that there are fundamental rights. What are fundamental rights? They are in part 3 of the Constitution. They are situated in part 3 of the Constitution, which say that there are certain rights which are inalienable to certain citizens or all people residing in the country, which no one can take away from them unless certain reasonable restrictions are applied on them. So there are certain rights which are granted to the citizens and other people of the country. Now at the same time, when certain rights are granted to citizens, it can also be possible that certain duties are also to be performed by the citizens. Always remember that rights are correlative to the duties, which means that if a student has the right to go and play or go and do the leisure activity, it is also his or her duty to do the needful act of studying or the act that is required of him or her at that age. So rights and duties are always correlative. So earlier these rights were given in the part 3 of the constitution, but there were no duties. But it was envisaged that certain duties should also be present for the citizens of the country so that they know what is expected out of them, what is the expected behavior out of them. So fundamental duties were incorporated in the Indian Constitution by the 42nd Amendment in 1976 upon the recommendations of the Swarn Singh Committee that was constituted by the government earlier that year. So Swarn Singh Committee gave up certain recommendations that these should be the fundamental duties, and among other recommendations, some recommendations were accepted by the government and 42nd Amendment became the origin point for these duties. So these are an important part of the Indian Constitution, and they prescribed, embody some of the highest ideals preached by our great saints, philosophers, social reformers and political leaders. And no duties were incorporated in the original constitution at the time of the commencement in the year 1950. And the fundamental duties help to regulate the behavior of the citizens and to bring about excellence in all spheres of the citizens. So the presence of duties is to show the citizens the light forward, the way forward as to what is expected out of them, what is the ideal behavior, what is the ideal action. So this was the intention behind bringing out the fundamental duties. And where are they situated now? So part 4A of the Constitution now envisage the fundamental duties under the Constitution. So it was borrowed from the USSR Constitution. Now we always get questions respect to the various concepts of Constitution and their sources of the borrowing. So the duties were borrowed from the USSR Constitution, and it is enumerated in part 4A, and like DPSP are non-justiciable. So this became the major difference between fundamental rights and fundamental duties, that where the fundamental rights are enforceable or justiciable. What does that mean? That if there is any violation of such a right, one can go to the court to enforce that right. This is what is known as justiciable or enforceable. But these duties, when they were incorporated in the Constitution, they were made non-justiciable or excuse me, non-enforceable, which meant that they were certainly incorporated in the Constitution, but the violation of them per se would not be able to liable for punishment under a court case. So they were made non-justiciable. Why they were made so is because they were initially enumerated to, as I said, show the citizens the way forward, but suddenly they cannot be made justiciable, that their non-following is made a matter of punishment, and added by the 42nd Constitution Amendment, and with the addition of one more duty added by the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002, now the total duties are 11 in number, and all of them are incorporated under Article 51A. So Article 51A has the 11 duties. Let's take a look at these duties. What do these fundamental duties exactly say? So first duty under Article 51A says that to abide by the Constitution and respects its ideals and institutions and the national flag and the national anthem. That's the first duty. Then to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. To uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. To defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. To promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood. Harmony is peace, and common brotherhood, what we call bhaichara in Hindi. So to promote the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, regional or sectional diversities, and to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. So as we can see from the wordings of the fundamental duties, they urge the citizens of the country to lead a better life and to exist in the society in a more dignified way and a better way. So it asks them to shun all the discriminations, to live in harmony, to respect women, to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. Not just this, to protect and improve the natural environment as well. including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures, to develop the scientific temper, humanism and spirit of inquiry and reform, and to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. Then to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity. As we can see, this is an ideal given to each individual, to strive towards excellence in all spheres, so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. Subsequently, another duty which was added by the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act was for a parent or guardian to provide opportunities for education for the child and ward between the age of 6 and 14, right? So this was added when Article 21A was recognized, that is the right to education was recognized as a fundamental right. So these are the 11 fundamental duties, the wordings of which tell us that what are the highest standards of conducting for the individual and society on various fronts. Now, what are the features of these duties? As we can see, there are some duties which are moral in nature, they give us moral lessons. Then some duties are there which are civic in nature, as to what are those responsibilities as a citizen. So they have been laid down under the fundamental duties, and they can be applied to foreigners also, but fundamental duties are only restricted to Indian citizens. So it is the fundamental rights only which are there for some foreigners and some citizens, but the fundamental duties are only there for the Indian citizens. And the fundamental duties are not enforceable in nature. We saw this, excuse me, and these duties are also related to Hindu traditions or mythology, like paying respect to the country or promoting the spirit of brotherhood. So these are the features of the fundamental duties. What is their relevance? As we saw these duties, so they serve as a reminder to the citizens that while enjoying the rights, they should also be conscious of duties they owe to the country, society and fellow citizens. It makes citizens conscious of his social and citizenship responsibilities, so that they shape the society in which all become solicitous and considerate of their inalienable rights of our fellow citizens. So as we can see, it is very important to make the citizens understand what is their job in a society, so that they can better perform their functions and they can be of better use to their fellow citizens and to society at large. It also creates a feeling that the citizens are not mere spectators but active participants in the realization of national goals. This is a very important point, and they are ideal in nature and lead the citizen in the right direction. They help the courts in examining and determining the constitutional validity of the law. Now this is a very important point, where the usage of fundamental duties, even though they are non-enforceable, is done by the courts to gauge the constitutional validity of the law. When they would be gauging that whether a law violates the fundamental rights, violates the DPSP, it will also check whether they violate the fundamental duties of the citizens. So that would also help the court. This happened in 1992 when the Supreme Court ruled that in determining the constitutionality of any law, if a court finds that the law in question seeks to give effect to fundamental duty, it may consider such a law to be reasonable and in relation to Article 14 or 19, and thus save such a law from unconstitutionality. So this is the relevance of fundamental duties. But are there any criticisms of fundamental duties which are cited by the experts? So first is that they are made non-justiciable in nature. As much as it is a feature of the fundamental duties, it is also cited as one of the most biggest criticisms, saying that if they are not enforceable in a court of law, what's the point of giving them or enumerating them? Then because important duties such as tax paying, family planning are not covered. Then vague and ambiguous provisions which are difficult to understood by a common man. The wordings of the fundamental duties are quite complex and vague, and superfluous provisions, since they would generally be followed even if they were not included. So certain superfluous provisions are also there, right, which certain experts feel that they need not necessarily be mentioned in the constitution. And inclusion as an appendage to the constitution reduces the value and intent behind fundamental duties. What do you mean by inclusion as an appendage? Since it's included only in a small part of Article 51A, in the Part 4A, that's an added part to the Constitution, to the DPSP part. That is why it reduces the value and intent behind fundamental duties. So this was the discussion respect to the pros and cons of fundamental duties, what exactly are fundamental duties and what is their relevance. You can comment in the comment box below, should fundamental duties be made enforceable? This can be very well asked as a question in the mains examination, in the upcoming mains examination. So you can comment your answers below. With this, let's move on to our next article for the day. Now the next article reads, which features in the newspaper, reads about the credit growth, which says that 15% is by which the state bank is expecting its credit growth to rise. Now why have we chosen this article? This article says that SBI expects to sustain credit growth, 15% growth. So earlier in the month of July, the credit growth was 14.93%. And in the current upcoming month, the SBI is speculating that it will increase the credit growth to 15%. It will achieve higher credit growth. But why is this happening? Some days ago, we saw a news wherein the cash reserve, the repo rate was increased, right? We had seen this news that repo rate had been increased. What is the repo rate? The repo rate is the rate at which the RBI grants loans to the banks. So this was increased, and from the month of May 2022, it has been increased from 140 basis points, which means that it has continuously been increased. And why was this done? To tame the effects of inflation, to tame the effects of rising prices in the economy. So the repo rate was increasing. But what this article suggests is that, so this is a highlight in the functioning of Indian economy for us as to the repo rate is increased or decreased by the RBI, which means that the rate for lending to the banks is changed, which means that, let's say a bank known as SBI or any XYZ bank will go to RBI to take loans and since the rate would be high, it would get loans at a higher interest rate. So what RBI did this so that the money supply in the economy, the loan taking capacity of the people should decrease and money supply should decrease. Now so it means that this should get translated in the Indian economy. Excuse me. So this should get translated in the Indian economy, wherein the banks should also increase their lending rate, and so then subsequently the citizens should borrow less. So has this happened? As of now, we are not able to see this, and SBI, even though the repo rate was increased, the SBI is seeing an increase in its credit growth, which means that more and more people are still borrowing loans. So this is a sneak peek to the effect of translation of interest rate. So whenever we talk about the RBI changing the repo rate, we should always have a note in mind that it does not get translated very easily and quickly into the Indian economy. So that becomes the important part from this article. So this was it today with the important articles from the day. We'll meet again tomorrow with the important articles from tomorrow's newspaper. Thank you.